Jay Ferruggia, host of the Renegade Radio podcast, has been helping guys become the strongest version of themselves since 1994. He is one of the pioneers for that warehouse gym style of training, starting to do things such as flipping tires, dragging sleds, kettlebells, pressing logs, using rings, and more in the mid-90s. Jay is a highly sought-after, world-renowned strength and conditioning specialist and muscle-building expert. Over the past 17 years, he has personally trained more than 700 athletes from over 90 different NCAA, NFL, NHL, and MLB organizations. He has also worked extensively with firefighters, police officers, military personnel, Hollywood stars, and entertainers. Jay has been featured in Men's Health, Muscle and Fitness, Men's Fitness, Fast Company, Huffington Post, Live Strong, Entrepreneur, On It, ESPN, CBS, and more. Most importantly, Jason has helped over 53,000 skinny guys and hard gainers in 126 different countries build muscle and gain weight faster than they ever thought possible. Over the course of his life, he's faced many challenges such as being physically and mentally weak, skinny, fat, sad, depressed, insecure, painfully shy, socially awkward, crippled with anxiety and indecision, addiction, and went broke on more than one occasion. Jay and I discuss his background, finding inspiration for training others, getting strong and looking good in just a half hour a day, how 95% of fitness advice is BS and the 5% that's worth knowing, supplementation, the importance of simplicity and the 80-20 rule, building meaningful relationships, giving to charity, training pro athletes, starting the Renegade Radio podcast, small tribal gatherings of men missing in our society, and more. For more information on Jay, visit his website or follow him on social media at Jay Ferruggia. If this podcast impacts or speaks to you, please share it and leave a review. And as always, follow More You Know Pod and Riley Arm4Tech on social media.
I'm just trying to make it all make sense.
The
More
You
No
Podcast.
So Jay, what made you start helping people become the strongest version of themselves in the mid-90s through that group training, warehouse gym style that's so popular nowadays?
So I grew up as a really skinny, weak, insecure kid, and I was socially awkward and painfully shy. And so I got into training because during those days I was obsessed with pro wrestling. I've always been a huge pro wrestling fan, but I was obsessed as a kid watching, Ravishing Rick Rude and the Dynamite Kid and Ricky Steamboat and all these guys who were super jacked every Saturday morning. And I was like, man, I'd love to be like that. And even when I was younger, I was into, kind of the jacked superhero physiques. Wolverine was always my favorite. And so, like around when I was 12-ish, so 1986, I started lifting weights for the first time. My dad had gotten into it, and my cousin, Christine, started dating a pro wrestler named Eric Weeda. He was not, it was super cool. It was like, oh, this is crazy. This guy's here all the time. And he was like 6'5", 250, jacked out of his mind. And he wasn't with WWF, but some smaller federation. But anyway, he's around all the time. So that really sparked it. I was like, man, there's a pro wrestler around, going to the gym with him. But I went from doing nothing, kind of just being this fat, awkward kid, to all of a sudden now I'm in the gym 2 hours a day doing these body part splits, and it didn't really work. So I was like, man, I got to figure out how to make this work. And so then, through the transformation that I had and just the obsession that I developed, I was like, man, this is what I want to do for a living. I want to work with athletes, because I always played sports as a kid. I was just never that great. And as I got further into it, a couple years into college, I was like, I wish I was doing this when I was in high school, and I knew what I knew now. And so anyway, that was kind of the start of it.
It's fascinating how childhood interests and random influences in your life can start you down a path you never thought possible. For Jay, it was his cousin's pro wrestler boyfriend, and I had a similar experience. I was always business-minded but never considered entrepreneurship. Along with that, while both of my parents were programmers constantly exposing me to tech, I never had interest in developing software. And that all changed from the ages of 17 to 19, interacting with my high school girlfriend's brother-in-law. Shout out to Kevin Rice of Hathaway. He would constantly go out of his way to share guidance with me at family gatherings regarding both entrepreneurship and developing software. Then when I was 19, we went down to San Luis Obispo for my girlfriend's sister's wedding where they lived. Kevin took me to his office, showed me around, and introduced me to a couple of employees who eventually ended up selling software to WeWork. This really opened my eyes to a whole new world that set me down the path I'm on today. Sometimes, as Travis Chappell said in episode 1, It's more important to get out of your bubble to gain perspective, and other times it's just as valuable to gain perspective from those who happen to come in your circle. Okay, gotcha. And you started in around 94, 96?
94, I started training people. Yep.
Okay, and so what was the start like? How did you really get started?
So I was going to school, and originally I went to school for communications, and then I just became obsessed with training. So I switched over to exercise science, started interning in the weight room. Back then, there's no internet, there's no place really you can learn about this stuff other than just getting like a certification, which I got some of those, and then I got every book you could order in the back of Ironman magazine. And I'm just always educating myself. Started going to workshops and seminars, interning with people, and then I got really sick and I had to transfer home. And during that summer, I was 19. I had to take a semester off, and I was on all kinds of medication and bed rest. And I started training people that summer when I was 19. Business took off, and I knew nothing about business, and I really wasn't even that good at training people, but somehow business took off. And so I transferred back home and continued to run the business while I was 19 going to school. And I saved up every single dime from training people at their house or at public gyms, so that finally, within a year or two later, I could rent space, my own private space. And then over the next few years, and it was literally underground in a basement. So it wasn't just, quote unquote underground. It was literally underground. And we trained people there. It was 1,000 square foot space. And it just became known within a few years. I had, on a regular day, I would have 50 to 75 athletes coming in. We had all the leading scorers, rushers, you name it, record breakers from all the high schools around. Those guys eventually went on to become college athletes, then pro, and then they would bring me guys back. So it was just kind of this huge cycle that took off. And that was my life, 12 hours a day for 12, 15 years.
Something that's come up over and over in this podcast is that your degree you pursue or receive doesn't dictate the life you must live. Following your passions like Jay did is possible with hard work, time, and focusing on improvement. Another important point that continues to be discussed throughout the podcast is that when opportunity arises, it's important to jump on it and then figure out how to make it work. For Jay, his business started booming purely from his passion and skill in training. He had no idea how to run a business and then figured it out on the go. This is something the amazing Jesse Itzler preaches as well. Take the leap, jump in the deep end, and work hard to make it happen. Could you please share a little about this strategy for getting in great shape in just a few hours per week?
Sure, yeah, it doesn't take a lot. I mean, I think that's what holds a lot of people back is they think, well, it's got to be this huge, monumental, time-consuming thing. But really, that's not true at all. I mean, you can get a great workout in 15 minutes, never mind 30, Sometimes my workouts will be 10, 15 minutes if I'm in a rush, where I'll literally just I have a set of kettlebells at home. I might literally just do a goblet squat, kettlebell swing, and some kind of ab exercise for 3 or 4 rounds. That'll take me 10, 12 minutes. Or I can do a full body workout like that, whatever it might be. And anyone can do that at home, where you could just do push-ups, inverted rows. You just need something to hang a suspension strap on, and then do some kind of single leg squat or goblet squat. You do 3 rounds of that. I mean, that's going to take you no time to get a great workout. You could do high intensity interval stuff, 10 minutes, great workout. Just go outside and sprint up a hill for 10 minutes. Run up, walk back down, run up, walk back down, 10 minutes. That's a great workout. So it doesn't have to be this big thing. And I always tell people start small, because you don't want to go from doing nothing to now you're driving 15 minutes to the gym, you have a 15-minute warm-up, you're talking to people, you train for an hour, you shower, you drive back. That's 2.5 hours. Who's going to commit to that on a regular basis? That's a huge thing to bite off. Whereas start with stuff at home, and then if that works and you love it and you want to get out and go to the gym, sure, you can progress to that. But even then, keep it short and sweet.
I think that's a really good point you bring up is when you try to commit to going to the gym, if you aren't somebody who's into working out, that 2 hours, that's the commitment of getting there and then all of the post-workout stuff. That's such a big change in somebody's life. Exactly.
Yeah.
And you could be using kettlebells. You could have a pull-up bar that's connected on your door. There's so many things you'd be doing, push-ups, squats, leg raises. So there's so much value in really just starting at small and gradually working up. So many of us are deterred from working out due to not wanting to make that huge new couple-hour commitment of going to the gym. It's realistically too big of a change in a lot of people's lives. What Jay brought up regarding getting a great workout in just a half hour that improves your strength and physique is something I applied in my life a handful of months ago. My body and my strength has completely transformed, and I personally largely do multiple sets of push-ups and pull-ups throughout my day, with some yoga as well. I find time, whether it be when I'm sending emails, programming, editing a podcast, or reading, to get the workout in. Working out does not need to require going to the gym, be hard, or time-consuming.
And you also say that 95% of fitness stuff is BS. So what's the 5% that's really important?
Big. So strength training is super important.
Okay.
That's the most important thing. I mean, that's more important than doing conditioning. And the reality is, like, everybody these days, two thinks you need this really long warm up, where you need to foam roll and do all these mobility drills. That's if you're training incorrectly. If you're beating your body up and you don't know how to train correctly and you're not mastering exercise execution, then you need an hour warm up. You need to foam roll every day, and you always feel like shit. But if not, if you train properly the way I teach, you don't need to do a lot of that stuff. Strength training is important because it's going to help you build muscle, strength, burn body fat, and like I said, if done properly, it'll improve mobility, stability, flexibility. So it's and your conditioning. So it's kind of a great bang for your buck, all in one type of deal. And what's important when it comes to strength training is that you use big compound movements that incorporate the most muscle mass. So instead of getting into isolation exercises like flies, you do a push-up or a dumbbell press. Instead of just, obsessing about curls and push downs, do chin-ups, do rows, do close grip push-ups, dumbbell floor presses, dips if your shoulders can handle them, things like that. So basic exercises that you can use a lot of muscle mass and that you can progressively get stronger on. So if you can only do 5 push-ups a day, that's fine. But hopefully in a month, you'll be able to do 10, and then 15, and then 20. And then once you get to that point, you add some weight on your back, or you do them on rings, or you use a band behind your back. You want to progressively add resistance over time. If you do the same thing all the time, you never get anywhere.
Sure. I think that's a really good point you bring up of gradually building up.
Yeah, absolutely. And you got to take it slow. I mean, some people will really rush the strength gains, which is a mistake. It's worse. Well, it's hard to say what's worse, doing nothing and just doing the same thing over and over, because then you get nowhere. But when you rush the strength gains, it's awesome because you're like, wow, I set a PR, I set a personal record, I'm getting so much stronger. But your muscles get a lot stronger at a faster rate than your tendons and ligaments can. And so that leads to joint issues. And it also leads to breakdown of technique. So you're doing perfect technique week 1, week 2, week 3, and then you start getting sloppy just to add a few more pounds, getting sloppier to add a few more pounds. Now all of a sudden, oh man, my shoulder kills. Now I got to take a month off because my shoulder's destroyed or my knees are destroyed. So technique can never break down. So you get stronger at the rate your body gets stronger, and then you add weight. Don't rush it. It's important, but you can't rush it or you do get hurt.
Focusing on strength training done properly improves strength, flexibility, and so much more. Instead of isolating muscles, focusing on basic exercises that are body weight based provides the most effective benefit towards your health and strength. Your whole body will get strong in a shorter amount of time without need for stretching and pain that comes from hurting yourself training wrong while doing isolated exercises. It's also very important to gradually build up as you work out and not try to take on more than you can handle. This will lead to incorrect form and injury due to your ligaments and tendons not being as strong as your muscles are. Start with what you can handle and then work your way up. Faraz Zahabi, one of the greatest coaches in MMA history, discussed this on Joe Rogan. You should be focused on volume and not maxing out. If you do what you can handle and stay dedicated to your routine, you'll produce a higher volume of reps, which in the long run makes you stronger than if you focus on doing as much weight as possible, which leads to injury and soreness.
And so what are your thoughts on supplementation in general, and then also what would be considered performance-enhancing supplementation, stuff like SARMs or pro hormones? There's people like the Bell brothers, Louis Simmons, who are kind of more pro of that. I'm curious what your thoughts are.
I think, first and foremost, you should never think about supplements until A, your sleep is dialed in and perfect. Sleep's first and foremost. So you got to get your sleep dialed in. Then your nutrition's got to be dialed in. Then we can think about supplements. But as long as you're eating enough vegetables, fruits, real protein, not food out of a box or bag, something your great grandparents would have eaten, something that you could pronounce and understand what the ingredients are. Okay, then if we have a good balance, then let's see what's missing. And how do you know that? You could take a shotgun approach and just take a bunch of stuff, or you could get really scientific and go get blood work done and say, okay, I'm deficient in magnesium. Most people are. So that's a general recommendation I make, because almost everyone's deficient in magnesium. Almost everyone's deficient in vitamin D. So that's a great one. And omega-3s, usually people are deficient in omega-3s. So those three are good staples. If you want a preventative, a good mixed green kind of superfood blend, because most of us probably don't eat as many vegetables as we need to get all the nutrients and nutrition. And the reality is a lot of people have digestive stress. So chewing and eating all those vegetables sometimes can cause a lot of issues too. So I think if you drink a green juice or get a green supplement, that's a good insurance policy. But I think to really get to the next level, you should get blood work done regularly, and then you're not guessing. Then you see, okay, I'm actually deficient in these things. This is what I need.
That's smart. And so with blood testing, I've seen Ben Greenfield and other people discuss that. It's something that can just kind of seem intimidating, I guess, to go about doing. What would you suggest is the easiest way of getting your blood work done? Like, how often would you go to the doctor? Would you get one of those they have those little like circular things you can put in your arm. I saw Ben Greenfield's using one of those. What suggestions do you have?
I think at least twice a year is a good idea for most people.
Okay.
I'm over 40, so I go quarterly now.
Okay.
Get my blood work and see where everything's at, and then I will basically run tests for the next 90 days, and maybe I'll try out this new diet protocol, I'll try out this new supplement, and then I'll see where I'm at. So it's not really a guessing game. I'm always observing what the blood work shows. But that's something that I skipped over. Oh, as far as performance enhancing goes, I would say like vitamin D is actually a hormone, so it could be considered, if you are deficient in vitamin D and you get your vitamin D levels up, like that will be hugely performance enhancing. Creatine's over time, creatine's proven in countless studies. That's it really, though. Most of those supplements that are kind of bodybuilding and performance enhancing don't really do that much. You're better off, eating steak, yams, and a strong cup of coffee. Like that's going to get you more than one of those pre-workout supplements and not be as damaging for your health.
Jay brings up such a great point regarding human performance and supplementation. Before you invest in any form of supplementation, you should first focus on sleep and diet. Sleep is so drastically important not just to building muscle, but overall performance. It's extremely important to get at least 8 hours of sleep. If not, your muscles will not build, and along with that, your cognitive performance will be hindered. A lack of sleep can literally make you dumber. Matthew Walker is a sleep expert and explains the importance of sleep in his book and on Joe Rogan's podcast. It's not only important to performance, but prevents future diseases such as dementia. Diet is also extremely important. I love what he says about diet and think he said it better than anyone else I've ever heard. Try to eat something that your great-great-grandparents ate, nothing processed with ingredients you can't pronounce or high in sugar that comes in a box or bag. Supplementing with important vitamins and nutrients such as vitamin D, magnesium, and a green pill or drink will provide more benefit than most supplements purchased at GNC. This is because most people are deficient in one or more of these. You should take the time to get a blood test, see where you're at, try to improve it over a few months, and then go in for another test to see if the results have changed. And then if not, you should repeat the process and ask a doctor for guidance if necessary.
And so I really appreciate how open you are about the various struggles you've had with depression, anxiety, being socially awkward, being skinny and fat. I was wondering if you could just kind of open up about the struggles you've had and how you overcame them.
Well, I think a lot of it went back to childhood, certain issues maybe with my parents and whatnot, and how we grew up. And then that kind of just carried itself into school, where because, if you're a quiet kid, kids will pick on you. So sure. I'm quiet, I'm socially awkward, I'm not the greatest athlete, I'm fat, then I'm skinny fat. And so, of course, that's going to lead to people picking on me, bullying me, beating me up, stuffing me in lockers, knocking my books down all the time. And the reality is I wouldn't trade that for the world, because it made me who I am today and kind of gave me that chip on my shoulder to work harder and, to prove people wrong. Now, that could be a bad thing if you don't address that later in life. You could always be insane and out of your mind with that. You have to address that at some point. But anyway, yeah, I just realized at some point in my mid to late 30s, actually, I was like, man, there's a lot of issues that I'm not addressing, where I'm way bigger. I went from 147 pounds when I graduated high school, same height I am now, 6 foot tall, to 225. And I'm like, I'm way bigger. I'm way stronger. I have more confidence. I can certainly own the room if I'm in my own gym, but out in the world, I'm still really a bigger, stronger version of that insecure, shy, awkward kid. And I still have anger. I still have issues. So I need to address that. So I spent a few years. I mean, it's not an overnight thing, It's reading hundreds of books. It's really being, conscious about who you're surrounding yourself with. And are these people bringing you down? Are these people speaking the way you want to speak? Or are they saying, oh, it must be nice, or this guy that, and this sucks, and that sucks, and screw that guy? Like, you got to be aware of that stuff. And as I started to become more aware of that, I started to distance myself from certain people, put myself in the right environments where people are positive and they're uplifting you and they're happy for your success. And if you have an idea, they say, yes, and how about this on top of it? Whereas, the wrong circle to be around is you have an idea and they're like, yeah, it's never going to work. That's don't even think about that. Just, play it safe. So being aware of those things, reading the right books, being around the right people, it was a deep dive for years. I wish I could say you could fix it in 30 days, but it's hard. But being aware of it and then taking small steps to overcome that. You're like, okay, well, I am insecure in groups of people. What do I need to do? What's one small habit I could implement and start to do? Maybe I could just make more eye contact. Maybe I could initiate a conversation, or even just give a head nod or a compliment or something like that, and start to track that in a daily journal, just like you track a PR if you're training, right? Oh, I got a new chin up PR, a new squat PR. And then each day, each month, start to build that up more and let that snowball. And then your confidence will build like anything else. When you first start training, you can't do a lot of things. You don't say, I'll never be able to do 10 chin-ups, or I'll never squat 135. You work up to it. First day you play the guitar, you don't say, oh, this is weird, I can't play like Jimi Hendrix on day one. Of course not. You work up to it. But people don't think that way when it comes to their communication skills or their self-confidence. You tell yourself the story and you write this narrative of, well, that's how my family is. That's how I always was. That's just it. That's how it's always going to be. No, it doesn't have to be like that. You can improve anything.
That's really powerful. Thank you for sharing that, because that's something I've never heard in reference to being socially awkward or anything that has to do with how you socially interact or how you feel with your anxiety or anything like that. That's really powerful, is just taking it one step at a time and gradually building up how you would with working out or anything else.
Thanks, man.
I'm really grateful for Jay opening up and sharing such powerful wisdom. Depending on your environment and your upbringing, you can face certain struggles that can carry on throughout your life. They never have to define you, though. Jay became the strongest version of himself physically, putting on 80 pounds after high school. Certain insecurities and issues he had went away. Realizing he didn't deal with certain insecurities and weaknesses from a mental and emotional perspective, he began to build those skills like he built strength in the past. There are two important takeaways from what he shared. First, your past does not define you. Your family and environment does not define you. At the end of the day, you can make a change to improve yourself at any moment. Second, when it comes to aspects that are mental or emotional, it can be gradually improved, similar to working out. Take note of the right form, practice continually, take note of your progress, and work towards acquiring that skill.
Well, certainly strength training. You got strength training is the anchor. The Rock talks about it's his anchor. Arnold's always talked about that. Some of the most successful people on the planet in any endeavor, they get up and they train every single day. Robert Irvine, the famous chef. So many people, Gary Vaynerchuk, gets to the gym every morning. That is the anchor. That's the key. You got to have a strong physical body, because then you'll have more energy, you'll have more clarity, you'll have more focus, you'll be able to take on more meetings, get more shit done during the day. So that's it, first and foremost. You got to get up and push against that resistance every day. Do something, break a sweat. That's first and foremost. And then you got to, like I said before, you got to develop your leadership muscles, your confidence. Those things are really important. Dan Kennedy said that everyone's walking around with their umbilical cord out and they want somebody to plug into. They want somebody to lead. Why don't you become that leader? So I think everybody needs to learn about leadership, read books about leadership. John Wooden's got a great book. John C. Maxwell's got a great book about leadership. Become a leader. Don't say, I wasn't a leader in my life. Of course not, but you can become one. People just step up. Force yourself to become a leader. Force yourself to make better decisions and faster decisions. So if you take a while to make decisions, if you flip-flop on decisions, that breeds distrust, anxiety, stress, anger amongst those people around you, people that work for you, people that might want to help you, people that do favors for you. If you say, hey, we're going to go with red, and then the next day you say, oh, you know what? I was thinking about it. Blue might be better. Then everyone's like, oh, man, I was so invested in red. I had all these good ideas about red. You sold me on red. Now you're going to blue. And then if you continue to do that, if you develop that reputation, over time, people are like, I'm not going to help this dude anymore. Or I don't give a shit what he says because he can't be trusted. I know he's going to flip-flop. So why am I going to get invested in it? So those kinds of things are super important. And then I would say the next thing that comes to mind is you have to prioritize relationships. Relationships are everything. Relationships are the most important thing in life. So at the end of the day, someone's giving you a eulogy. They're never going to talk about how much money you made, how much you hustled, how jacked you were, what a great athlete you were. Unless you're a famous pro athlete, unless you're Michael Jordan, they're probably not going to say that. They're not going to say most of those things that we deem important, that we think are really the things that we should dedicate our focus and energy to. All they're really going to talk about is what kind of person you were. Relationships, at the end of the day, if you get a terminal illness today, the doctor tells you have 6 weeks to live, you're going to say, man, was I a good enough friend to this person? Was I a good enough husband? Was I a good enough dad? And who do I want to spend those last 6 weeks with doing what? Relationships and experiences. You're never going to say, oh man, I got so much work to do, or I got to do whatever else. I got to make more money, or I got to get more workouts. And it's that. You're going to want to prioritize relationships. So once you make that a priority, your whole life gets better.
Working out is so drastically important towards performing at the highest level in anything. When you do, you are more focused and have more energy to take on the tasks during your day. This is something, as he said, great people such as The Rock, Gary Vee, and Robert Irvine all place importance in. One was a pro wrestler turned actor, the other an entrepreneur, and lastly a chef. No matter the industry, it provides the backbone for accomplishment. The next important thing is building your leadership skills. Even if you do not plan to be a leader, these skills will help advance whatever you pursue along with personal interactions. Most people look for a leader, so if you learn these skills, you will be able to help people. His last important thing is putting relationships over everything else. Jay's absolutely right. Your relationships and how you treat others is ultimately what you are remembered for. Possessions and accomplishments rarely matter on a deathbed or when someone talks about you at your funeral. So focus on valuing your time with loved ones and being the best you can to them. The rare cases where what people think about goes beyond that is when someone leaves a legacy like Michael Jordan did. Ultimately, what this was an additional reach where he built relationships or touched people's lives, impacting them through his accomplishments. Little had to do with basketball and more so had to do with providing a picture of what is possible with hard work along with what greatness looks like. Striving to make an impact where you do this should be admired and taken as inspiration to do something similar in your own lane. Just never forget about what's most important, which is how you make people feel.
What advice do you have for building meaningful relationships?
So you have to take the ball in your court. You take the reins. So let's say you and I are somewhere at a party, and I'd heard, oh, you got to meet Riley. He's a super cool guy. He knows this. He's into that. You guys have a lot in common. Cool. I have to go up to you. I have to initiate the conversation. I can't just hang back and sit there and be like, oh, I hope it comes up to me. So it's always your responsibility. Nobody's good at this. Naturally, you get better at it. You take the reins and you put yourself out of your comfort zone. So I walk over, I initiate the conversation. Now, when you leave, the ball, again, is always in your court. So never give someone a business card. Never do what everyone does at every single meeting. Oh, cool. It's great talking to you. Let's hang out sometime. Peace. Never happens. You never see that person again. You never connect. So what I do immediately is my phone is out, which my phone is never out if we're having a conversation. That's A. My phone's never on the dinner table. I'm hanging out with friends. They never see my phone. But you and I just met. We're at a party. Say, cool. I'm going to get your information because I'm not putting it on you. I'm putting it on me. So I'm saying, cool, what are you comfortable giving me? Your email, your phone, whatever. Here, let me get that. Now I got your information. So now I don't sit around and say, oh, Riley's a dick, or maybe he didn't like me, or think all this shit. It's just, no, my responsibility. Now, within 48 hours, I'm going to hit you up. I'm going to send you a message. I'm going to send you a text. Man, it was awesome talking to you. We might have, something in common that was really cool, talking about the 86 Mets or whatever we talk. I don't know, whatever, And I might have a recommendation for you. Yo, you should read this book, or here's a great article. Now that shows you that I was listening and paying attention. Like, I thought of you when I read this because I remember that we had this conversation. If applicable, maybe I'll introduce you to someone within 48 hours. You told me you love this thing. Hey, my buddy runs this company that sells those things, and he's looking to get the word out. Maybe he'll send you some free stuff or whatever it might be. Things like that. You always want to be thinking this way. What can you do? And then I'm going to say, Riley, Thursday, between 10 and 1, I'm free. Friday, between 10 and 1, I'm free. Let's meet up for lunch at the firehouse. Any of those work for you? If not, let's lock something down the following week. So now we're getting back together, because the more time that goes by, the relationship's dead. So we're going to get together soon. Within a week or two, we're going to hang out. I'm making the intros. I'm linking you up with stuff. And then we're going to follow up again. And again, I'm not giving you the chance to make plans next time. I'm making plans. Awesome. We had a great lunch. Cool. You know what? We should go to the Comedy Store one night. Let's go hang out. Like, whatever. You have to prioritize that stuff. And again, when you're with the person, you need to be present. Your phone's not there. And people need to get better at listening. You just need to have listening skills, and we're never taught that. There's communication classes, there's public speaking classes, there's acting classes. There's no listening classes, which is one of the reasons I tell everybody on the planet, take an improv class, because it teaches you how to listen. So listening is a superpower. I'm sorry?
I was just saying I love that, because I've heard other people bring up improv too and the power of it, and it's something that you can see really has an effect on how people listen, because I've seen people who are in like more of a public light, I suppose, who've talked about it, and I've seen the advantages of it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, listening is a superpower. So, you know, I'll be with friends or new friends sometimes that someone introduced me to, and later I might get a text from my friend say, oh, thanks for meeting up with John. He said he had the greatest time and you guys had the most amazing talk. And I might have only said 5 things. I just asked them 5 follow-up questions that were 1 line each, but I allowed him to talk and showed I was interested. And, you know, that people, during conversation, people talk about themselves 60% of the time. So if you can get them to talk about themselves, get them to open up, show that you're interested, ask meaningful, good follow-up questions, people are going to love being around you. They're going to love being with you. They're going to love talking to you. I feel like I'm going on a tangent. I lost the question, but yeah, all those things are really important.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. And I think you bring up another really interesting point, was talking about connecting right away, bringing your phone out and getting their contact information, whatever's easiest for them. And I think it kind of parallels with something that a lot of people are familiar with, which is like picking up women. If you're asking a girl for her phone number, you wouldn't just give a girl a business card. You wouldn't just give her the card and then expect her she's going to hit you back up and you guys are going to go on a date. No, you need to listen and then build this relationship quickly and get the contact information and reach out in the near future. You can't let too much distance and time go by.
Dude, that's such a great analogy. I don't know how I never thought of that. Yeah, it's like dating, but you're just building a friendship.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Jay's right. You must initiate and take the wheel when it comes to relationships. It's all your responsibility. I love that he also brings up that none of us start out good at this. You need to work at it and go out of your way to connect with others. Getting their contact information pretty much right off the bat is absolutely brilliant. Doing this ensures you can continue the conversation later. It's also extremely important to then contact them within a couple of days. Look to connect with them over something you related to and look to provide them value. From here, understand you should continue to take the wheel when it comes to interactions. The parallel I discussed regarding dating and engaging with women is something I think can make how you should act a little more clear. Be to the point, provide value, look to connect, and make sure you take the wheel on ensuring the relationship goes further.
So another thing you're really big on is simplicity and the 80-20 rule. How do you apply that in your life?
I apply it across the board with everything. So with nutrition, there's about 10 foods I eat. I eat red meat, venison, beef, elk, bison, yak. There might be one other one. So I eat red meat, I eat some chicken, I eat some fish, I eat leafy greens, no other vegetables. I eat blueberries, avocado, olive oil, macadamia nut oil, dark chocolate, and coffee. Those are the 10 things I eat. That's it. Now, once in a blue moon, of course, I'll have some cheat foods. I'll have some things that are off that list. But to keep it super simple, those are the 10 foods that don't upset my gut in any way. I feel amazing when I eat them. So that's it. Boom, done. Training, simple. You see on Instagram, people are always coming up with 87 new pull-down variations you never tried, and 26 new ways to do a split squat. Now, I have 3 for each. I have basic movement patterns. I have 3, maybe 4, some maybe 5, but that's it. And we do those. We have a core of maybe 40 exercises total that we do from now until eternity. And just get better at them. And as you get more advanced, if you get bored, I've been training for 30 years, so I might get bored, so I might switch up the way we load them. But it's super basic. I'm not doing all these clown things that you see on Instagram all day. And I know what works. I know what I need to do, what I need to get in and out. When it comes to work, every morning we get up. We have 100 things to do, possibly. So I got to look at that list and say, okay, we got to get rid of 95 of these. 80 would be good because that would be 80-20. But ideally, let's get rid of 95 because I know after so many years in business that there's only a few things that make a difference. But we're always trying. So we'll try new stuff. And then 90 days later, I'll be like, these 3 things that we spent 20 grand on and all these hours did absolutely nothing. Now let's get back to the 3 to 4 things that actually make a difference and just continue to do those and invest more time and resources and energy in those. So you have to be ruthless doing that. Don't just do something because this book or this business expert says you have to do it. Don't do it because everyone else is doing it. Don't do it because this guy's killing it with a podcast. So you think you need to have a podcast? Not necessarily. It has to be something that works for you, that actually moves the needle. And you have to measure that stuff or you don't know. So that's fitness, that's business. And as far as just, relationships and social life, again, just prioritizing spending time with people. That's the most important thing. And ask yourself, people don't spend enough time in introspection and just writing and journaling and quiet, and turn your phone off and just go out in nature and sit there with yourself. I mean, we don't have that time. We're so far removed from the days of Thoreau and Roosevelt and Benjamin Franklin, where people would just go out alone and think. Like, nobody does that anymore. So you have to prioritize that. Give yourself that downtime. And it's just not normal. It's not healthy for any system in your body to be constantly entertained, to be constantly just staring at a screen. Like, give yourself alone time. Think, what's really important to me? What is my 80-20? What makes me happy? Again, for most people, it's spending time with people you love. It's connection, community, contribution. Those three things, more than anything, those three C's make a bigger difference than anything else. So how do I get more of that in my life? And how do I forget about all this other bullshit that I think I have to do because I see it every day on social media, and I have FOMO and I fear of missing out, and I'm comparing myself to everybody else.
Jay brings up so many valuable points regarding keeping life simple and eliminating unnecessary aspects of your life. It can be, as he said, applied across the board in your life. Eat clean and simple, stick to a workout regimen that involves full body exercises with a routine that's not filled with ridiculous new exercises. This helps with working out in just a half hour or less too. With your work or school, many tasks you may find necessary or not, and if you focus on the 3 or 4 things most important, you will have success. You need to figure out what works best for you and then focus solely on what works best and matters most. Also prioritize your most important relationships. Do not forget about family and close friends because you think it is important to hang out with a bunch of people you barely know. I also love Jay's 3 C's, which I think provide clarity towards simplifying the process of prioritizing what's important. These are connection, community, and contribution. If something does not tend to one of these 3, it is probably a waste of time in the whole grand scheme of things.
How can someone eliminate physical and mental clutter and overcome information overload and decision fatigue like you're talking about? You kind of started talking about your 3 C's and some of the basis of it, but
yeah, I mean, it comes down to what I said there is you got to do that 80-20 evaluation. What's important? That's going to eliminate a lot of the clutter. Dude, honestly, physical clutter drives people insane too. So it's a lot of the cliches about, the more you own owns you. Spend a weekend, go through your house, get rid of stuff, get rid of books, get rid of stuff you don't wear. Like, if you have a shirt that you wear that's in your closet, you have to say, do I look amazing in this? If I had a chance to go on the Tonight Show or to speak at Madison Square Garden, would I wear this? Do I always look great in this? If the paparazzi was following me around, would I want to be caught in this? If not, throw it out. Keep a small amount of stuff. All that physical clutter drives you nuts and you can't think clearly and you're not happy. So do that. People read too many books. Like, there's this weird obsession on social media with how fast can you consume information. And look, I'm guilty of it too, and I've been part of it, where I've read hundreds and hundreds of books over the years. But now if I could go back, honestly, I'd probably read maybe 25. I mean, I'm looking at my bookshelf. There's probably 400 books right there. But I trimmed that down from 1,000, and I'm still trying to get that down to about 100. But honestly, I would probably read 25 books, pick my top 10, and read them over and over and over. If people master the knowledge in 10 books, which would take a lifetime to memorize and be able to repeat that, be able to teach that, be able to recite that, you would be brilliant. You would be so successful. You'd be so far ahead of everyone else on the planet. But we race and we read. You got to read a book a week and all that stuff. But there's no way you could possibly comprehend that unless you're a genius. And I'm far from that. So, and then the other thing is really reducing the amount of time you spend on social media. So I would suggest pick one. Like, I haven't been on Twitter or Facebook in years. Now, that said, I do spend probably an hour a day on Instagram, which is probably 45 minutes too long. So I need to get, but for me, I'm only on there running my business. Of course, I'm guilty of wasting time. I'm sure I probably waste 15 minutes, maybe more a day, scrolling and looking at stupid shit. But I'm pretty conscious of it. You have to be conscious of it. If you're just mindless about it and that's your leisure time, man, what a horrible life that is. How are you going to look back in a year or 10 years or 20 years? Like, wow, all those hours that I added up to scrolling through Instagram. Like, do fun stuff. But you got to, I would get apps or those blockers, or now the newest iPhones have those timers. where you just aren't on social media all the time. That's what's driving so many people nuts and causing anxiety and information overload and just confusion.
I couldn't agree more. And I love the point that you brought up about books and not reading too many. I'm guilty of doing the same. And it kind of made me think of, so with Netflix, you'll start a new show, you might watch an episode, you might watch 2 episodes. If it's not any good, it sucks. You go back to either a show that you're used to watching or maybe you look for a new one. Would you kind of suggest doing that, where it's like you stick to your 10 shows that you like, your 10 favorite movies, but with the books?
I do that with books too, and I used to have this weird thing where if I started a book, I gotta finish it, even if I'm on chapter 3. And I'm like, this book's not that great, but I gotta plow through it. Now, as soon as I feel it's not great, gone, it's done. I stop it, move on to something else, and
It's really important to prioritize what matters and eliminate unnecessary aspects of your life. I appreciate the point that Jay brings up of it applying to physical space and possessions as well. Focusing on having a minimalist mentality, removing clutter, will assist in focusing on what's important. I like how Jay referred to only having clothes in your closet that you would wear on The Tonight Show, or would be comfortable having the paparazzi take a photo of you in. Having a simple wardrobe allows you to focus your thoughts on something more important than dressing yourself also. Steve Jobs and many others minimized their wardrobe to few outfits so they do not need to think about what to wear and can focus on what's important. With learning and knowledge, it's valuable to narrow down your focus like this as well. Decide what's important and most valuable to understand. Focus on getting the best understanding of that instead of distracting yourself with information that doesn't apply. Most importantly, it's important to minimize your time on social media if you're going to use it at all. It's one thing if it's for business purposes, but you should eliminate the amount of focus and time spent with social media as a whole. This can be done by following less people, lowering the amount of time spent scrolling, or only using a specific social media instead of all of them.
Another thing I really appreciate is that you're very charitable, and I was just wondering if you could talk about the charities that you're involved with and why you got involved with them.
So I think that there's a kind of a law of the universe that you really can't outgive the universe, and if you give, it always comes back to you. So, and that was one of the reasons I worked. Like, if you're just working to have a bigger house and a bigger shoe collection and fancier clothes and whatnot, you're never really going to be that fulfilled. But
Agreed.
One of the reasons I work hard is because I want to contribute. So what's important, and here's the other thing when it comes to 80/20. So I used to have 10 or 12 different charities that we would have on auto pay every month, and we would send X amount to each of these charities, because I do care a lot about things, and I have pictures of Martin Luther King on my wall, and Bruce Lee and Muhammad Ali and guys like that, and I've always those have been my idols. So I wanted to give back. So I'm passionate about a lot of things, and have a lot of compassion. But I realized that giving just a couple $100 here and there to these charities isn't going to make as much of a difference as if I select 2 or 3 and donate way more money to them. So I had to think what's really important to me in my own environment, my own neighborhood, locally. What do I do? What would tie into my business and kind of my lifestyle, and what I'm all about, my ethos. So I think that's going to be obviously different for everybody, but pick 1 or 2 that really mean a lot to you and do more for them, as opposed to just spreading it out too much.
I love that. I think that's something else that's really powerful is in general, don't spread yourself too thin with anything.
Yeah.
But if you do that with your charity and you give $10 here and you give $10 there and you give $10 there, or if you could throw 20,000 in one place or 20,000 between 2, that does so much more.
Yeah.
It's almost like wasting your money and wasting your time splitting it between all of those, because it does build up, it's not building up the same way.
Yeah, you can make a much bigger difference with 1 or 2.
Jay's compassion towards serving and giving to make a change is really admirable. I was inspired in a similar way to pursue greatness and help others giving back. I feel the same way, where I wouldn't be working if it wasn't to make a change, because working just to make money and have possessions doesn't lead to fulfillment in life. From a psychological perspective, serving others and giving to those in need provides more happiness than purchasing possessions. I also had never considered this, but the point of narrowing down your focus on who you serve or provide charity to will make a larger impact. If you spread it thin, the level of impact you will make will be smaller.
Frank Kern has this great thing where he says you should have 3 core messaging pillars. Now, maybe you could extend that up to 5, but that is it. And you pick those 3 messages, decide what those are for you, and you hammer them 24/7, 365 days a year. So it's not one day I'm talking about this, one day I'm talking about that. No. Every single day, it's the same thing. People get too confused and they try to do way too many things and talk about too many things. You can't do that. Look at ultra successful companies and apps and gadgets and whatever. They do one thing, and it's super simple. And people who have developed a big following for coaching or selling information, whatever, it's one thing. And people need to just hear that message repeatedly, over and over and over and over again.
Having 3 to 5 core messages that you continue to focus on daily applies to any goal. This could be a business, podcast, blog, personal brand, and so much more. For Apple, it has to do with clean design, simplicity, and quality service. For Joe Rogan's podcast, it's an honest conversation, unfiltered, that provides knowledge or insight to improve perspective. Take time to determine those 3 to 5 core messages, pursue them with the focus of gradually improving day by day, and make sure to consistently address those messages to ensure they are still most important or need to be altered.
I've also seen that with this, you've discussed how small tribal gatherings of men is something that's missing in our society. And this is something that I couldn't really agree with more. What compelled you to really start doing it that way?
Just because of the journey I went through and developing all these relationships and friendships and seeing what an impact it had on my life. And then just learning about, how we evolved, how this world and this life is so unnatural, and how we would have evolved. We would have lived in groups of 30 to 40 people. We would have never been alone. We would have always been together. We would have got up in the morning and went foraging for food and went hunting and building shelter together. Even at night, people would have stayed together and just slept in super close proximity, low to the ground together. So you would always be in those groups. And now it's just really, it doesn't happen anymore. Male or female, it doesn't happen as much as it should. You spend way too much time alone in isolation, and that breeds depression and stress and anxiety. I mean, the worst punishment you can give a prisoner is solitary confinement. So bringing people together and creating this community, I think is really unique. And especially, like you mentioned, for men, these groups right now, they are just for men, because I think we do it less and less, and it's really a shame.
Jay brings up so many important points here regarding human nature. We live such in a natural form of existence nowadays, and this creates issues. There's a higher level of isolation than ever seen before, and this creates depression as well as a lack of motivation. Him saying the worst form of punishment you can give a prisoner is solitary confinement paints this picture perfectly. You can't consider digital interactions as connection with others either. For thousands of years, we almost never spent time alone, interacting with a tightly knit group of a couple dozen people from the time we woke up to the time we went to bed, helping each other with a common goal to live and love. The beautiful aspects of tribal living are gone, and the nasty aspects such as the creation of separation, increases in violence and hatred, lack of empathy, and extreme judgment driven by ideologies are getting worse than ever before. We now live in an American society where you are more likely to die from overdose or suicide than most anything else. Mental illness and a lack of fulfillment plague our communities, and people would rather spend time criticizing or attacking others on the internet rather than working to improve their life or society or connect with others. Look for that connection with others, make an emphasis to spend time with others, and grow with others. We are grateful you took the time to listen to our conversation and hope it makes a positive impact in your life. Please subscribe to the podcast wherever you are listening or watching it, check out other episodes, leave a review, and follow us on social media at More You Know Pod. Also, please don't forget about our sweepstakes. Retweet a clip with the hashtag #TheMoreYouKnow and new podcast from our Twitter for a chance to win a signed copy of my upcoming book, The More You Know, coming this fall. Tag 2 friends in the comments on a clip on Instagram for a chance to win a brand new copy of Dean Graziosi's Millionaire Mindset or Ed Milet's Max Out. Like us or share a clip on Facebook for a chance to win a book I have read that highly inspired me, signed by me with an inspirational message. Again, thank you for listening as we propel with podcasting through the more you know.
I'm just trying to make it all make sense.
The More You Know Podcast.